Okay, guys, we are live. We are on the team house right now. This is episode, geez, I think this might be episode 56. I apologize for never being able to keep count. But tonight's episode, I am Jack Murphy here with our guest tonight, Kenn Miller. Kenn served in the LRRPs in Vietnam. The LRRPs are their long-range reconnaissance patrols, which they went through several different incarnations of it, eventually reorganized as ranger companies. And we'll talk about this with Kenn for sure. He was in the 101st LRRPs and Rangers, did 3 extensions in Vietnam, served all the way from private to recon team leader. He's a Recondo School graduate. And then after the war, he went over to Taiwan and pursued his education, learned Mandarin, which he speaks fluently. He's definitely, Kenn, what was your PhD on?
I don't have the PhD. I made a point of stopping at every space where I'm about to get something like that, because I came from a family, everybody in my family, my parents, my sister, my first cousins, and their parents all had beaucoup.
They're all academics.
Oh, they were all academics. So, you know, my father was the president of the University of Nevada when I was in high school. And I was determined to go into the military. And my parents were not pleased, but they let me make my own decision. But every day, the last half of my senior year in high school, every day I was called down to the counselors and saying, you won't get mad, you won't get drafted. Your father's the president of the university. And I already have enlisted. You know, I'm just waiting for the time to come. It really annoyed me. And that the idea that because of what my father was doing, that I'm above this. This was the whole draft thing in the Vietnam War was not very fair. And I was really offended at them saying that, oh, we'll get you this so you don't have to. And I already decided that I wanted to go to be a paratrooper, partly because I was young and wanted it, wanted adventure and all of this sort of stuff, but also, as strange as it might sound, because I was raised up not in Reno, but in Ann Arbor, Michigan, as a liberal. And to me, a good liberal is not going to let just the kids who aren't rich do all the wars. And I think, wait a minute, people in Vietnam are having communism forced on them. As a good liberal, you got to go fight that. And I was young and idealistic.
So
but
that's how
when it comes to getting, I've seriously gone to 3 universities, 3 good ones, and I always stop at a certain point. I don't want a PhD because there's so many of them around in my family, and I wanted to be the black sheep.
Is that why you went to Taiwan after the war rather than pursuing a normal education?
Well, I was fascinated from the day that the plane that I was on landed at Tan Son Nhut Airport, and we got on a bus to go to Bien Hoa to the repo depot. I was fascinated with East Asia, and Taiwan didn't have a war going on at the time. Well, it did, obviously, and still does, but it wasn't like Vietnam. I wanted to really learn about East Asia. And my wife has told my wife is Taiwanese Chinese, and I remember her telling a Vietnamese friend of hers that, oh, Vietnam was Kenn's first love. And then her friend says, "Oh, where does she live now?" Oh, it's just I got fascinated by that part of the world, and I still am. And uh, I was quite recently very happy. I was really depressed at what the pandemic is doing to America, and our response to it has not been good. But I was very glad to know that Taiwan and Vietnam really had their shit in order when it came to that.
But
Because
do you think that's part of coming from an Asian culture as opposed to a Western culture, which is
oh
more
yes,
individualistic?
the first thing is people in East Asia have is a tradition. I mean, if you have a little cold, you put on a mask.
Yeah.
This is very common. It's nothing unusual. The other thing is the Confucian culture. You it's not just I want mine, no, it's we belong to a culture. We belong to a family, to a neighborhood, to a country. And I think this has made it easier for East Asia to you don't see bikers in Japan or South Korea and Taiwan, and they all have them, but you don't see them going on a big rally and not wearing this and drinking. And, this is just no. It's a different culture. The attitudes like that. And think it worked for them and was bad for us.
So let's take it back to the beginning, Ken. I want to hear about your arrival in Vietnam. You mentioned it briefly in your initial fascination with East Asia. Tell us what year was that you arrived in Vietnam? What was that experience like?
67. It was late spring in 67. And, uh, I was uh, right out of jump school, and so proud to be a paratrooper, and I just really wanted to get into it. And the plane, we landed it in the Philippines, and for about 2 hours, and then on to Vietnam. And I got there, and they put us on a bus, and I'm looking out the windows. The bus had these mesh on them so nobody could throw a grenade in the window on us. And I'm just watching it, and hey, this is cool. I like this place, man. This is fascinating. And that's where I still am, sort of. About it, And from there you go to the replacement depot, and I was terrified the thought that they would put me in a leg unit. You know, I just no. But they didn't. I went to the 101st.
Mhm.
My first unit was in A Troop, second of the 17th Cav, which was theoretically and officially the recon unit for the whole First Brigade, which was all there was for the 101st in Vietnam at that time. The other two brigades were still at Fort Campbell, and basically it was a road recon sort of thing. It was but we did a lot of work with the LRRP platoon, which was completely not an official unit, but we worked with them and you got to know these guys. And so I just kind of moved on over there. And
What do you mean they were not an official unit? Like who were
well,
these
no,
guys?
it was a provisional unit,
Mhm.
the LRRP unit. It was part uh, of the brigade's headquarters company, but it was a provisional unit.
Mhm.
And but I went there, and then when the other two brigades came back or came to Vietnam from Fort Campbell, they had a company already, a LRRP company that had been organized and so forth. So
Okay.
we joined that, you know, and I couldn't imagine wanting to do anything else. The only, yeah, the only thing else I would have wanted to do was if I could have done it without having to leave Vietnam, I would love to have been on an A team just so I could be around mountain yards. I
Mhm.
wanted to see what that was all about. But you know, I would have had to go back to Fort Bragg and go, do a
Mhm.
whole bunch of stuff, and then I'd probably get back and they say, "Oh, you were a LRRP of the 101st. Okay, here you're going to be over in Project Delta or something."
Yeah, yeah.
So, I was glad to stay where I was. Eventually, uh, they stopped letting us. If you had too many, if you voluntarily extended, finally they said, "Nope, you can't extend anymore. No more extensions." And so leaving, I remember being on the bus leaving Bien Hoa to go back to Tan Son Nhut Air, and just, I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave here. I want to stay here.
You and who was it? Pat Tadina, who's over there for like 5 years.
Yeah, he was there much longer than me. Pat Tadina was, just amazing. He was in the 173rd LRRPs, but I knew him, but not real well.
Right, right.
But
He passed away recently,
I know,
unfortunately.
and he was beyond. He was beyond whatever he was beyond it. I mean, he was.
So, Ken, for there are young people listening to this who like barely even know what the Vietnam War is. Like, can you articulate for people out there what is a LRRP? What is a LRRP company? Like, what in the world are we talking about?
LRRP stands for Long Range Reconnaissance Patrol, and then later they took out the reconnaissance thing and made Long Range Patrol, so they could give us other things other than just reconnaissance, which they already were doing. We were doing raids and all sorts of other things beforehand. It was just on paper a change, and we knew we were we knew that we were rangers because there were no there was a ranger school, but there were no ranger units
Yep.
in the Army. We knew that we were the rangers, and when we weren't surprised when they officially made it that on the 1st of February 1969, which is a birthday for, in my opinion, for the whole 75th Ranger Regiment. But Fort Benning does not pay any attention to that. We don't count. That one doesn't count. But we were, I recently did a book review of this book, and it's a
Hold it up for us, please.
War
on the
on the Run, the epic story of Robert Rogers and the conquest of America's first frontier. This is a hard book to read because it goes into great detail, but it's fascinating because this is before the United States was and it was a brutal life and even more brutal war. And that's sort of what American Rangers were up until the 1970s. They were a provisional unit. It was that you got recruited volunteers in the theater, and they were always troublemakers when they weren't out. And
I'm gonna share a picture here of a young troublemaker, Ken.
Oh, I don't know who that guy is. But I remember coming back, getting off that helicopter, and the first sergeant said, "You know what you need, don't you?" And I said, "Yep, yep." I know what I need. And the next day I got a haircut. But, you know, we were different. We were very different from what the Rangers are now. You
Mhm.
know, we were kind of scofflaws, scofflaws. I'm getting senile, so I don't remember words very well. But you know, we were always kind of troublemakers, and you know, drinking and having a good time when we weren't out in the field. And we knew that our units could be just taken out anytime.
Mhm.
They could just, and any of our teams could discipline. One thing about recon is you may not get a chance to say goodbye to the world when you have only 6 people and you don't have what do you call it now, social distance. You didn't have that in a small recon team. You had to be able to touch the guy around you.
Can you talk about that? Like the mission of a LRRP team and what you guys actually did out there in the jungles?
Our main thing was to go out, and we would get they would show us a map, and then they would have intelligence come in and tell us this is what we think is here on this place and that place. And then the team leader and the assistant team leader, and sometimes the whole team, would go out and fly over the area the day before just to see, and looking for LZs, for landing zones, and looking for uh, looking for. I know the words, but they're not coming to me.
Like LZs and
LZs, and
and
where the river is, and where this little hill is, and where there's something. And we would come back, and then we'd have about a day with the whole team to just go over the map, and do our drills. What happens if you get hit from here, you hit from there, and then we would go out, and often we would be waiting by the helicopter pad, and then they couldn't get in. Helicopters, and still, if the if the fog was so bad, and if it was raining, they couldn't get us in, and they wouldn't be able to get us out. And so we would be sitting there and just, damn, and then we're ready to go, and then they cancel it. That would happen about a third of the time, it seemed like. It depended on where you are in Vietnam, but when you're up in I Corps and you're going west toward Laos, that's pretty common.
which fire base was this you were working out of?
Well, we were at Camp Eagle, which was the 101st
Okay.
and a bunch of other groups. But the thing about Camp Eagle was we were the first people on it. Right after the Tet things starts to smooth out a little bit around Saigon and Bien Hoa in that area and other places. We get a 3 6-man teams. So, okay, you guys go get all of your stuff, get ready, and we're going to take you down to the airstrip at Bien Hoa. Be ready in an hour. And what's going on? What's happening? They didn't tell us. We had 1 lieutenant, and then the rest were just 3 recon teams. And we get on the helicopter, on the plane, and we fly, and we don't know where we're going. And then we land, and it's raining out, and the again, I'm forgetting the terminology,
The ramp.
but the ramp goes down, and we get out in the rain, and we don't know where we are, and then we can hear over the rain, we could hear screams and moans and people, that kind of horrible shit that you don't like to hear, but you hear sometimes. And we go over, and we don't know what's going on. And we go toward where the side of the airport is, and there's a little Navy, a Navy clinic there. And there's guys out in the out in the rain, and just so many people, mainly Marines, because the Battle of Hue was going on. And this is where
Way
they're
City.
taking them to get it. And that's the plane that we went up was full of people on stretchers. And so we go to the naval clinic, you know, and our medics, each team would have a medic. How well trained they were could go from being an SF medic to being somebody that just had it in the unit training. But they go over and the Navy doctor said, "Get the hell out of here! We appreciate it, but we're this is we don't have any place for any more people." And then up comes a deuce and a half truck, and there's a Hmong or somebody, some indigenous guy and a guy with a green beret driving it. "You guys are 101st LRRPs? Yeah, well, get in." And they took off and they took us to a cemetery. You know, the Vietnamese and Chinese cemeteries with the kind of round thing and then the body that looks like an egg. And they dropped us off there and gave us some combo information. And what are we doing? And we can hear and see a lot that's going on across the river in Hue. We were about 2 miles away, I guess. And we were a trip, like if, you know, if the North Vietnamese come south, we're supposed to be able to let FOB1 and a bunch of other people notify them that the enemy's coming south towards
So they
Phu
put
Bai.
you out there as an LPOP, just as like an early warning.
Yep. And we did the best we could to make ourselves feel somewhat good in the graves. And
Wow.
nobody else was there. Just the 19 of us. And then the battle seemed to go down a little bit. And day by day, more and more people came, usually from originally it was just guys from our unit. But by the time we left 2 years later or something, 2.5 years later, Camp Eagle was a huge military city. But we were the first people there. And the Battle of Hue was going on right there, and we wanted to be in it. And we were at the same time kind of glad that we weren't. Because, I mean, as soon as we got off the plane, we saw and heard
Right.
how bad it was.
And you guys were, I mean, a 6-man LRRP team, or even throwing you guys together as a 19-man LRRP platoon and just sending you out there as infantry is also kind of the wrong answer. Like, that's really not the right way to use you guys.
We were used in various ways. At one point, we were palace guard for the general. And,
Oh yeah, of course.
I mean, you know, that kind of thing. You know, we have this elite unit. We can do whatever we want with them, and they don't really matter.
So, Ken, six guys on a LRRP team. What are the duty positions on the patrol? You got team leader, assistant team leader.
Okay, you have the first guy is, you know, you have one. These are the words that I know that are in my head, and they're so far back into. You have a point man, then you have a slack man, and everybody has their area that they're covering. So you have 360 as you're moving, and you're moving this way, you're moving that way. If you're the point man, you're dealing with what's in front of you higher and what's low. And then the slack man behind you is watching for you. And then the guy behind him is got an arc of that he's watching, and then over here they do, and the last guy would be maybe every other step or so, if possible. Sometimes you can't always do it exactly the way you should, but would be turning around to check behind you, and then if you're leaving a trail, try to get rid of it. And your job was to go to check out certain places that intelligence wanted you to check out, or if you see something that's interesting, you do. But all the time you're somebody's on the radio, and usually you would take your booty hat down around here and
Whispering, yeah.
and whisper in it and so forth. And going in, the scariest thing always was when you're coming in. Most of the time, the helicopter would go like this, up and down, up and down, up and down, so the enemy would not know where you're going in. And consequently, you didn't come down and stop and get out of the helicopter. We'd have to go out of it while it's still moving in the air. And the consequence of this is every guy I know who did recon in Vietnam, with the exception of John Singleton Meyer, who I think Tilt is his nickname. You know him.
Yeah, I know John quite well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Tilt's lied, because he said no, I don't have any of those problems, but everybody else does, because of the way we'd have to jump in moving helicopters. We could have sometimes as much as 100 pounds on our backs, and bang, uneven ground. It's just. But we thought, okay, well, God, this hurts. What we do is you just walk it out. And that's fine at the time, but it catches up with you many years later.
As you're talking, were you wearing your rucksack, or did the rucksacks go out first and then
No,
you chase them
you'd
out?
be wearing your rucksacks.
Oh my God! And you're falling. You must have fallen at least 6
stuff.
feet, 6 feet down through the elephant grass. Or whatever.
Oh yeah, and sometimes more than that. And every now and then somebody on a team would have their ankles shattered.
Yeah, and you got to pull them right back out.
Yeah, and which one of the worst things that happened to the company when I was there. That happened. The guy got taken out, medevaced out, and then the survivors from the team after this happened. This is in a lot of the books from our company. This is what happened in November 20th, 1968. Gary Linder.
The 6 Silent Men series.
Yeah, Gary Linder was badly hurt there, but everybody was.
That's the action where Gary was awarded the Silver Star.
Yeah, and I had switched to go on another team. I was on that. It was a heavy team. They had 2 teams together, and I wanted to go with the other team because they had seemed like they would have a more interesting mission. We were supposed to do a raid on a Camo site, a North Vietnamese Camo site, and so I traded with another guy, and he got killed on that one. And we got to the Camo site, but there were some wires still hanging down, but there was nobody there or anything. And then we had to just go to ground while these guys are fighting for their lives. And and we wanted to go, but we were, like 5 clicks away, and this place was just full of North Vietnamese, so we wouldn't have got very, very, very far.
How did this mission kick off? What was the whole process that started this whole? Because I'm trying to remember Gary Linderer's book. Is this the one where they ambushed some Vietnamese nurses?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about that mission and how that all unfolded?
Yeah, because I had gone to the other team for that mission, but I'm listening to it. I was an RTO there, so I'm listening to everything that's going on. And I could hear it fairly well on the radio. But what happened was they came in, and while they're going in, one of the guys shattered his ankles.
Hmm.
So in the morning, two of the guys took him back to an LZ to get him out. And then they came back and they got, the whole heady team got together. And, they assumed that, and probably rightly, that the local NVA figured that the team had left.
Hmm.
And all it was just one guy left. And then they set up on a trail. And I think, it really bothered Gary Linder for life, and probably still does, because his wife is a nurse. And nobody wanted to kill nurse, but as I remember, there wasn't just the nurses. There were some other officers with them too.
And they were uniformed NVA. They were
Yes,
not
yes, they were.
civilians per
No,
se.
they were not civilians, and they didn't know right off that that's what it.
Because of the height of the grass, they couldn't see them.
Well, yeah, and they're in uniform, and they're just walking past, and they set up a hasty ambush, and then I don't like to say this, but the guy who was team leader for that team shouldn't have been. And he was the only guy that I knew the whole time, the only enlisted guy I knew in the time I was in Vietnam, who would sit there and think about, I want to get this medal, I want to get a DSC, and I want to get the medal.
Yeah.
And so he says, well, gosh, we just pulled this ambush. And so what you do when to pull it, you get everything you can off the bodies, and if you have a prisoner, you get him, and then you get the hell out of there.
You're only 6 guys. You can't stay for a big fight.
Well, this was a heavy team, so it would be 12. Yes.
12
But it was
still.
only 11 because one guy had already.
Yeah, still 11 guys, not much.
But yeah, but oh no, I'm the team leader. He was young and ambitious, far too ambitious, and he said, well, we're going to stay here and ambush our own ambush. Because they'll never expect us to do that. And they didn't expect him to do that, but they ended up ambushing the ambushes. And a big fight went on for a long time. And one guy, Riley Cox, got his intestines out in his stomach, out of his stomach, and stuffed him in with his sweat towel and stayed there and fight it. I could hear him on the radio. He had a Car 15 and a shotgun. I could hear the shotgun go. And everybody was wounded, and 3 guys were killed right off. And it took a long time. And then to get a reaction force in, they got everybody that was in the company that was back in the rear, and they just grabbed stuff. And one guy, Tony Tricero, who just recently died of COVID-19. Tony Tricero was going home the next day. He'd already turned in his weapon and everything. And he's in Army skivvies, shower shoes, flip-flops. And he grabbed a rifle that had never been fired, grabbed that, and he's putting rounds into the magazines on, and he just took over, gets on the helicopter and tells the crew, there are 2 helicopters. And they were guys that we knew that carried us in and out all the time. And I said, oh, we're going in. And they went in, and, Tony's not prepared and not dressed for that even. And he's the first guy off. So he just takes over.
Wow.
Takes command. And all he ever got for that was a Brown Star with V. And he should have got a DSC. But Riley Cox got a Silver Star and should have got a DSC or a Medal of Honor. He had his guts in his lap and kept fighting. And then finally, when the reaction force came in, he got really angry. Get the fuck away from me. I'm staying here till everybody's ready. You know, he didn't want to be taken out till everybody else was gone. And I'm glad that I wasn't there. And I think less of myself because I wasn't.
Does that
I switched, the guy that I switched with got killed. And he got killed in my place. And I had there's a lot of things that if you're in a war, you carry some guilt for stuff. And it really bothered me when after the war, when I come back and then all these people would, oh, well, you must really have some great guilt problems, don't you? Fuck you. I mean, guilt titles, yeah, because of things I could have done and didn't do, or I wasn't fast enough, or I wasn't thinking enough, or something. But they're thinking that we're over there just massacring
down people,
children, and oh, there's some children, let's shoot them or something. I mean, I didn't want to hear that. We all carry a weight of guilt for things that we shouldn't. But just, God, if I'd done that a little bit better, so and so would have lived, But
is that really hard, Ken, to be the RTO and you have to listen on the radio, your friends being shot up and killed, and like you're doing your job and you are helping, but as a soldier, it's like you feel like you belong there, like you should be there shoulder to shoulder with them.
We definitely, all of us, we had a lieutenant with us on the team I was with on that, the one that were right,
the Camo site.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to go there. I thought there'd be a more interesting mission, and I wanted to see the lieutenant out in the field, because most of the time he's in the helicopter, put in and out, and all of us wanted to just head for right where they were, and if we could sort of hear the firing a little bit, even without the radio, depending on the wind or something. But we would have never gotten very far.
Right.
And the last thing that they needed was another team pinned down. So we just, for the next couple of days, we just go to ground. And
Ken, so much of what you're talking about here and you're describing, and I just have to point it out, is that you describe it so beautifully in your novel here that I read this a few months ago, Tiger the Lurp Dog. And so many of these experiences that you're talking about are fictionalized in this book, but I mean, you describe it in this novel with so much eloquence. And I feel that you really describe the mission that Lurps do, and the challenges and the environment, and all of it is in there. And I mean, there's more we can talk about. I'm sure we will. But I really think that people who are trying to get a better understanding of the Lurp mission and what you experienced, I think that novel is a great place to go.
They can, probably used bookstores, or Amazon might have it. Amazon has it.
It's on Amazon, yeah.
It's on Amazon, yeah. One of the things is I used the name for one of the guys on the last team that when I was a team leader for, I used Marvel McCann's first name for one of the characters, Marvel Kim, in the book.
Yeah, they're Korean American.
Yeah, and I had a feeling in the years since that he's got two other reasons to things that I could have done better on our last mission. That I feel guilty toward him about, but from what I've heard, said he's just pissed off that he used his name. Uh, but you know, none of us have seen him. He's one of the guys that hasn't come to a reunion or anything. But
Some guys
he
are
was,
like that. They just want to put the war behind them and totally forget about it.
yeah, he was from California, but he was originally from Guam, and Guam had, of all the parts of the United States, Guam had the most people, percentage-wise, killed in the Vietnam War.
Wow.
And the city that had the most is East LA. Yeah, I just, one thing about the Army that I felt more at home there than I generally do anywhere else is that you had everybody. You had every kind, we didn't have any Australian Aborigines in that I knew in the US Army, everything else. But I did run into an Australian Aborigine with the Aussie SAS had one there. I ran into him later and back in the rear. But, you know, I like that. That's how it should be. Everybody should be, you know, working together. And a lot of that's been lost, I think. And a
Is
lot of
that
it,
that kind of nostalgia that you have for the Vietnam War, which is as terrible as it was, there are a lot of things you look back on fondly, right?
oh, a lot. I was more alive then than I have been since. And I had a sense of that I was doing something. And, you know, if you're a LRRP and you're a good one, you've been doing it for a while. Once you go into once you insert into it, the first thing you do is you get away from where the helicopter was, and then you find a place and you lay down. You lay dog, just quiet, very quiet, and you're sitting there and you're listening, and you're feeling the wind, and you know which way the wind's blowing. You're listening to every sound. And if a cicada makes a sound, you're aware of it. Everything, all of your senses are so amazingly aligned. I've never been able to get that anywhere else. And you know, but I can still do better than most people probably. I think just concentrating and using your sense organs and knowing what this might mean and what that might mean. And you sit there for a long time, for a while. You let the helicopter leave, you know, into your boonie hat, and then you move on. And it one thing that I don't know how common this is, but we would go into areas where the enemy had been and where they had a camp and they'd moved. And often these were camps that were there, and for new troops coming in, they would be there before they set off to do something else. So you don't know when they might be coming back. But quite often we'd be into these places, and there'd be leeches everywhere. You know, there is anywhere. But I would look there and say, man, because they want to be down by water. And, you know, and I would think, what are the other guys? What are they doing for? They don't have the kind of the leech, the mosquito and leech repellent that we do. What do they do for that? You would end up having certain kinds of feelings of brothership with the guys on the other side. And I've had conversations only twice, both in America, once with a local Viet Cong and one with a guy who was a Chinese Sino-Chinese, Sino-Viet guy who got kicked out when China invaded Vietnam after the war. You know, he worked in the Chinese restaurant where my wife was working. And, you know, I really, you know, all these guys, and apparently they say, hey, we liked you guys, man, but it was a war. We had to try to kill you. You know, said, and what really gets me is the newest thing from the Sentinel, this SFA magazine, is basically these three books, a review of three books. One is by Aaron Banks. I think all SF guys know who Aaron Banks is. But he was in Hanoi right after the war ended. Here's another OSS guy that was there, and then here's the big one. You can see how many.
Wait, if you can hold it up a little bit, Ken, we can't really. Oh, there you go.
This
Why
one
Vietnam?
has got everything you could possibly know. This is very into, but you read this, and you'll see that they have pictures of OSS guys. You know, that's SF guys sitting there training the Viet Minh. And here's General Giap right there, and then Ho's right there. And I did these three books together for the Sentinel, and rereading it and knowing the things that over the years that I've studied and learned, it's a heartbreaker. It's a heartbreaker. And it's not something that it's easy to say around other Vietnam veterans that, hey, the guys we were fighting, they're our friends now. First, I won't say which group, but but one of the groups has got pretty good relations with the Vietnamese Special Forces now. Vietnam is one of America's favorite, our best friends right now. The people we fought are our buddies, became our buddies very quickly. And the ones that I've talked to said, we're always on your side. And both sides of the Vietnam War figured the United States was their natural ally and friend. That's heartbreaking. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, because they had already, you know, they had bigger concerns with next door neighbors, right? And
always, yeah.
And they had, I mean, maybe you can speak to it a little bit, Ken, but I mean, the Vietnamese had defended themselves from the Japanese, and then the French, and then we show up.
Well, it goes much further back. Look, Vietnam is right here, and right here is China. Vietnam and China, at least maybe not Manchuria that far off to the northeast, but most of China and Vietnam, you go back, they're the same people. You got to go back about 2,000 years or more. And there's so much in common that what is not in common is important to both countries. And China has been trying to take over Vietnam forever.
Right.
Because they say, what's wrong with you guys, man? You know, look at, you should be part of two of our provinces. This is the basic. I had Vietnamese friends in Taiwan, who others foreign students, they were Vietnamese. And I said, man, all these guys keep saying that we should be Chinese. And you know, the Americans and the Koreans would sort of sit there and say, well, yeah, I see that point of view, and I also see your point of view. You know, they're either very close or they're at each other's head. They're, you know, traditionally for 2,000 years, very close or at war with each other. And China is the big thing that they worry about, but China also it's also sort of home too Vietnam and China. I mean, I'm reading a biography of Ho Chi Minh right now, and all of these guys are all could speak Mandarin and so forth. And you can't really separate the two except by having them at war with each other. So Vietnam's always worried about China, but the French were there and they wanted them out of there for a long time. And the US policy was to get the French out of there. But that was Roosevelt, and then Roosevelt died. And Truman did not know what was coming up, what was going on. The British and the French were already trying to set for the French military to come back and take Vietnam over right after World War II. And the Japanese were there, but they were ready to go back to Japan. We completely lost, good luck to everybody. And if I feel like if we had given the Viet Minh a chance, and they were begging the OSS and America in general, we want somebody that'll stand with us so the Chinese will say, okay, you got a big brother here, get rid of the French, said, and Ho Chi Minh was a communist, no question. There's reasons that somebody that was born at the end of the 19th century could become a communist. If you're seeing how bad things could be.
Right. If you look
He
at
was
like
a
the
communist,
history, yeah.
but he and the people around them were initially very willing to have all sorts of Vietnamese involved in this. Let's get an independent country and unify it. And the French came back, and who brought the French back? Within like a month or two after Ho Chi Minh was elected president for the whole damn thing, US Navy Liberty ships brought the French military
And we
back.
supported them at Bien
all
Den
the
Phu,
way
right?
through, all the way through. And one of the things in that Ken Burns thing about the Vietnam War, I, like most Vietnam veterans, I did not like it.
Yeah, Tilt thought it was shit, didn't he?
I thought it was. Well, for one thing, they don't even mention mountain yards for our SF or anything, and it's obviously they're on the side of the North, not the South, and both sides had a reason for what they were doing, but that's beside the point. But the whole thing, but the first two episodes that give you the background leading up to this was good. And in there, they make the point that everything I've read in all of the books like this and so forth, the people who were there at the time, Ho Chi Minh kept saying, listen, we understand. He said, I lived in the United States for a while. I've lived in England. I've lived in France. I've lived in the Soviet Union. I've seen the bad side of communism in the Soviet Union, and I know what's coming off. And I know that you're terrified of communism, but don't let that be the main thing you're looking at. That's not our main thing.
Right.
And I believe him. If I heard that right after I came back from Vietnam or in the first 10 years, I would get angry. But
do you think, Ken, that as a country that we made a big mistake by conflating Vietnamese nationalism with sort of international communism?
Yeah, we Americans and humans in general, it's like people cannot accept that Lee Harvey Oswald, this loser, this got a couple of lucky shots
off. Yeah.
Oh no, it's it was a huge complicated conspiracy, which is just does not make any sense. but we always are looking for conspiracies,
Right.
not for
Very
something
much so.
that
Yeah.
actually happened. And the international communist thing. How did that last? How long did that last after the North Vietnamese won their civil war? 2 years, and they're fighting their next door neighbor who is communist. It's not a big.
So much for the domino theory, right?
Yeah. But humans are screwed up. It's easy to look back now and see the mistakes that everybody made.
Yeah.
But humans are fallible.
Ken, I mean, that's like, there's a lot to chew on there, quite frankly. And I know for you and for so many of the other guys I know, and to a lesser extent myself, I mean, it's all a lot to take in when you go to the Vietnam Memorial in Washington, D.C., and you see all those names on the wall, and to think about that. That's tough to deal with.
One thing that has come out of the Vietnam War, though, is a very strong friendship.
Mm-hmm.
I worry about the ARVN veterans.
Yeah.
But the communist veterans, and I think that's probably not so. They're not at each other's throats, the veterans, any more than we were after our Civil War. I hope they get over it completely, because, man, that's a good country. No matter, it's not perfect, no place is, but I like Vietnam. And the fact that, okay, do we have one more minute?
Of course you can.
Oh, okay. I don't know how much. I recently reread a book that I read when it first came out. I was in college in Taiwan, and I didn't like it. I resented it because I was so much still this gung-ho paratrooper, we're right and the enemies. And this book, this novel, shows the side of everybody in this complicated mess. And I resented that. And it's the novel by Jonathan Rubin, an SF guy.
Oh yeah, I have it right here. I haven't read it yet, but
the Barking Deer. It's I think it's the greatest book, the greatest novel, at least in English and probably in any language, that's come out from that war.
Really.
And you see everybody's point of view, and everybody's the pressures that are on them, and why they're doing this and why they're doing that. And the Jonathan Rubin, who wrote that book, also after the military, after SF, he had I'm not going to say a whole lot about what he did, but he had a very interesting career afterwards that was related. But he told me a story on the phone when I was reviewing his book. And he said he went back to Vietnam for the first time, and he's fluent in Vietnamese and French and Rade. Rade is one of the major mountain yard nations. And he was, even in SF, very rare to have somebody that was fluent in all three of them. And one of the main characters in The Barking Deer is the shaman, this Rade shaman. And he said he went back to Vietnam. He took 2 copies of his novel. And one of the first place he went to see the village where his A team had been. He said, and there's the shaman, the old shaman, still around, and he remembered him. And he gave him a copy of the book, and it's the first book. He wasn't even sure what a book was, but he gave him the book, and he put it into his box, into his sack of sacred things. And then a few days later, he's in Hanoi, and he's walking, and he's talking to people as he's going along, and well, that's where General Jap lives. And he says, what? Oh, he lives there. He said, oh yeah, just go knock on the door. He loves to see Americans and to see American veterans, which has been known for ever since the war ended. You know, he was, oh, come on in, let's figure out what exactly what happened. Yeah, I mean, we haven't had too many enemies that are that. So
gracious,
he goes,
after the
he
fact.
goes and he knocks on the door, and General Jap comes to the door in a kind of uniform, and invites him in, and they spend 2 hours drinking tea and talking over everything. And then he gives General Jap the copy of his book, and General Jap goes and puts it right between a book by Marx. It's in French, and then the Analects of Confucius, in Chinese, and put it right in between the two of them. And you know, what comes out of all this is, what's wrong with humanity, man? I mean, you know, it's like in that, had he and I but met beside some quaint old country, and we could have sat right down and wept, right, many a nipperkin, but ranged like infantry and staring face to face, I shot at him and him at me and killed him in his place. That what's it, Hardy, I think, wrote that poem, The Man He Killed. You know,
the frame, that frame of reference of war that takes all of these ostensibly normal people and places them into this conflict with one another that otherwise, you know, they wouldn't have had any grievances with one another.
Well, you know, a friend of mine that I grew up with was in the Battle of Wei. It was a Marine. And years later, you know, back in Ann Arbor, where I grew up and where I said, how do you feel about this? He said, man, he said, the Battle of Wei, he said, we were in here and it was just the worst thing in the world. And nobody could understand it except for the guys that were trying to kill us and that we're trying to kill. And he said, we have more in common with each other than we do anybody else in the world.
Right.
And you know, one more thing I want to say about the Battle of Wei. In this year, in April, I don't remember the date right now, but it was early in April, I decided to look at it. In 1968, after the Battle of Wei, there's a huge massacre. A lot of people, a lot of civilians got killed just being in the middle of it, a city. But there was a lot of really vicious, murderous Einsatzgruppen sort of death thing done to civilians in Wei. And it was one company, apparently, that I've just recently found out that did most of that. And that was their job.
One NVA company.
Yeah, the average NVA guy would never have been doing that stuff. You know, they might shoot civilians if there's Americans or Arvins on the other side, you know, between them. That's war. But we got a mission in April, just a few months after the battle, to go out and try to find certain bodies of people who had been taken out of Wei up the Perfume River, and then somewhere in that area there was a bunch of little tributary rivers going into the Perfume rivers. And there's intelligence that that's where a lot of the people have gone. So we were sent out to find them. To see if we could find.
Your 6-man LRRP team.
This was another heavy team.
Okay.
Because we wanted a lot of guns. We wanted, so we had 12 guys because this was very much their place. And it wasn't that very far from Hue, really, or from Camp Eagle, but it was far enough. And I was an RTO, and I was slack man for one of the guys on my team who was point man, and we come around these bamboo, thick bamboo, and bang, it hits us in the face, the smell. And we go up and there's a huge open grave, and there's bodies in there that have been in the rain and the snow, the sun and all of this, and one of them is parts of it just out of there, and there you could see where a tiger or a leopard had gone in and got it and came out with it and eat it there. And you couldn't, there wasn't much flesh, but it was like parchment, the skin was on the bones, and their civilian clothes, and a lot of the hair, blonde-haired people. And we're looking at this, so this is what they sent us to find. And, I'm the smallest guy. And so, they start saying, hey, Miller, here, you got a rope, go down there and count the bodies. And
I got another Miller picture I'm going to throw up here. Please continue.
Okay. And the helicopter, the pilot behind me, I went to AIT and jump school with him.
Oh, no shit.
And then he went and became a helicopter pilot. But so I'm sitting there, and I've got a camera. We all had these little pin double E cameras. I said, we got a camera. We just take pictures and count the heads.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they really were going to have me go down there, but and we stayed there and put up a nice 360 security, and waited while Graves registration unit and a infantry company from the 101st would come in. We had to wait for them to come there, and we're looking at this and when they got there, we got on the same helicopters that they came in and went back. And that's the first time ever that we got information to send to intelligence where we actually were told what intelligence had found. And what they told us, but I didn't get the pictures back. That was my thing. But those are the pictures you can see in certain books now. What happened was West Germany at that time was trying to be a good citizen in the world. And they had medical teams in Vietnam, I think in both places.
East Germany?
West Germany.
Interesting. Okay.
West Germany had them in the South, ships, hospital ships, and I think they would sometimes go up to the north too. But they were trying to just do good medicine stuff. And one of them was they were making a new dental part of Hue University Medical School. And Germans brought off a few $1 million worth of the newest stuff, and they brought in a lot of people, including a couple. She was a hygienist and he was a dentist, and all of these people were making a modern dental clinic for Wei University. And the special operations company of the 6th Battalion or brigade, I'm not sure, of the PAVN was the killing group. And they're the ones, and they went in and got a lot of people, and they got all of the people from Wei University's dentistry department and took them up the river, one round, just to the back of the head, killed them all, left them there. These are not people that are taking sides in the war. These are people that are trying to help people with their teeth and their health. And that gave a certain moral clarity to me that I think it made it easier for me to hate all the guys on the other side.
Yeah.
But I don't now. But I do hate the guys that were in those units. It's just like you read about the Nazis in Ukrainian and so forth.
Yeah.
You
That's
didn't get into
shit.
you get into you had to prove that you were a psychopath to get into those units. And but all that Wei went through, all that this beautiful city went through, come Christmas time, toward the end of 1968, Wei University's Imperial Palace Traditional Music Orchestra put on a show for the 1st ARVN Division and the 101st. And the 1st ARVN Division, by the way, was good. It's not one of these Marvin the ARVN's no good. The 1st ARVN Division had their shit in order. And we all had to go. And none of the chiefs, well, I don't want to listen to this goop music. God damn it, you're going. And we go there, and we knew some of the guys from the Heckbau company from the 1st ARVN Division, because that was their equivalent of us. And so we go in there, and there's all these GIs and all of these ARVNs, and there's these weird instruments to us. It wouldn't be to the ARVNs. And they start that Christmas song, sleigh ride.
Sleigh bells ringing. Yeah.
They start that, and these musics and these instruments we've never seen, and everybody goes, what? And then they go on, and all these guys are saying, I don't want to hear this music. And then at the end, everybody, wow. I will never get over that, and I will always love the city of Wei. That they got bounced back, and they invited us to that. It really moved me, and it seemed a lot of people were moved.
Were these instruments like similar to like the gamelan in Indonesia? Like, do you know what they were?
Yes, they're Vietnamese versions. There's some of them are just Vietnamese, but most of them are East Asian music. I know this because my wife is a musician and plays the guzheng. I've forgotten what it's called in Vietnamese, but it's the Chinese zither.
Okay, yeah. There's a couple different instruments that are very similar. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the names either.
In Japanese, it's called koto. In Chinese, it's guzheng. I forgot
where it's laying like horizontal, and they pluck the strings.
And it's kind of like this, and that's where I fell in love with that kind of music. And a lot of us were just, hey, this is cool music, And some guys would say, hey man, anybody got a joint? This is good music. It was that kind of thing, It's just, and in my house, I get to hear that kind of music all the time because my wife, the Vietnamese version of that is slightly different, but not much. You know, all of those string instruments in the world probably originally came from Persia.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, you know.
And your wife is Taiwanese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, right now, the Taiwanese are Chinese, but you know, because
Yeah.
it was terrible when Mao was there. And then there was a period of time where after Mao died, things were, I shouldn't be talking about this, but I don't care, where relationships across the Strait of Taiwan, the Taiwan Strait, were very good. And, you know, even now, there's people who live in Shanghai and they fly every day to work in Taipei or something. But it was really going good in the early part of this century. Xi Jinping became president, and he'd gone to school in, I think, in Ohio or Idaho or something. You know, he'd gone to school in the United States, and he's, you know, modern politician, can speak English, and he was good. But now he's turning all of mainland China into just a really scary artificial intelligence surveillance state.
Yeah. A panopticon state.
Yeah, and making claims to the whole China Sea. And, you know, a lot of people that were proud to be ethnic Chinese are now, who didn't used to say, well, they'd say, well, I'm Chinese. Now they're saying, I'm Taiwanese.
Right, right.
And that's really sad, because the world needs a good China and a strong America. And, you know, and China should have learned them. I hope that they've learned their lessons, not to go trying to pick up on their neighbor to the south, because they always get their asses kicked whenever they go after Vietnam. Vietnam always kicks their asses in the end.
Ken, I want to get back to some of your own experiences for a moment. I wanted to ask you about Recondo School, which I thought was very interesting, because it was, well, I'll let you describe it, but what's interesting about it is that it took place inside Vietnam, and the final mission was a live combat mission.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, everything was in theater, just like everything that with the LRRPs and the first 75th Rangers were all in the theater, you know, just traditional American Ranger stuff. We didn't have access to the Ranger School. And we wished we could have, but we couldn't get there. It was for lieutenants, and then later for the instant NCOs that went to the NCO school to become an NCO, which were, the idea of that was very resented by the troops in Vietnam, that some guy can come in and he's an E6 with a Ranger tab, and he's been in the Army less time than you've been in Vietnam. But what the trouble is, the guys that did this when they came over, they were good dudes, and they had their shit in order, and, you know, so we couldn't hold it against them, you know. But we resented the Army for giving them this. We wanted to go to Ranger School, and we couldn't. I offered to say, listen, can I use my next extension, my 30-day thing? Can I use that? No, I can't, because they had to turn you know, platoon leaders send them through the Ranger School and so forth. Okay, I can see that. But there's still a kind of nasty feeling, because World War II and a good number of the Korean War Rangers were given the the tab for combat
Service. So
service, and the SF tab you can get for that. And you know, we bring things up at Ranger Rendezvous, and the last time I've been to Ranger Rendezvous was 2011, and I'm not going to do another one because we're saying, okay, look, I understand now the way it works is the Ranger School now to the Ranger units is what the Recondo School was for us. You're going to be if you're going to be
you have to go.
a company, if you're going to be a leader, you go there. It's a leadership thing where you learn it. And the Recondo School was excellent, and it was fun. And you know, everybody I know that went to Recondo School, probably half of them ended up going on to SF as soon as they could. Because boy, we look, without SF, the LRRPs would have been completely fucked over. SF was always looking out for us. And they set up this wonderful school. And, you know, what can I say? You know,
what did they train you guys on? Like, what did you do when you get there, and what does the course entail?
It was similar to, we didn't get to do any jumps. We did a lot of rappelling and you know, getting in rigs and being pulled up and everything. We didn't do any we all kept saying, hey, can we get a jump while we're here? You know, and I said, yeah, I wish we could, but it was a commando thing. It was a three week, all day and most of the night thing. A lot of classroom work. Very heavy on navigation. Very heavy on that for good reason, and communication, medical things. You know, we're drawing blood from each other and giving each other, you know, a serum. Jesus, man, all the stuff the words.
Well, in your defense, Ken, it was like what 60 years ago now.
Yeah, it was 50 something years ago. But you know, the serum albumin that we'd be giving each other.
Okay.
This so that your organs don't go down if you bleeding too much
from blood loss, right?
Yeah, from blood loss. And so we would be practicing that all the time. But we practiced that in the company area back in the unit too. And sometimes they would be throwing dirt on you and hitting you just so you can do it when you're under stress. But there was nothing in the Recondo School that was bullshit. Nothing. It was all. And the good thing about it was we got to eat at the Special Forces mess club or whatever it is. The food was the best food I had in the Army. And you know, you'd have all of these old dudes, you know. I mean, they might be 29 or something, or E7 to 29, but you know, there were still guys that were World War II OSS guys that were still around. And you know, we're looking at these guys, you know, wow, man, look at you. We really admired the instructor, and the instructors who were pretty much our age, a little. They were a bit older than me, you know, but you know, in their mid-20s on up. These were guys I'll go anywhere with these guys, man. They were cool, and they knew their shit, and they were just no nonsense, no bullshit. They just, you know, I think everybody that ever went to Recondo School is really proud. So what happens is, you know, now in the Ranger thing, you're not completely a Ranger until you have your tab.
Mm-hmm.
We never had an opportunity to get a tab. But Could I get up for just a second?
Yeah,
Do we
go
have enough
for it.
time?
Yeah, no
Okay.
worries, Ken. Go for it. No, it's good a good break because I can give you the guys the obligatory call to action and ask all of you to like subscribe and mash that like button there, guys. Thank you. I know I hate doing it. I sound like a telethon guy. But please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks. Oh, what's up, Ken?
Okay, now look. So if we're walking around this and somebody in the bats now, well, you guys are not really. I mean, my experience is that the relation is, we're family, but it's bitter that we were not allowed. And at the last Ranger rendezvous I was at, this is what the business meeting was about. Said, look, everything we had, we would have we'd have our Ranger scrolls, or we'd have before that our LRRP scrolls. We had the Recondo School thing here. All of this, everything we had that set us apart, we had to take off as soon as you got off the plane coming back to Conus.
Yeah.
And people were bitter about that. And I don't blame them. And also, guys would sometimes, you'd come back and you're on your Class A's. You get in your Class A's, and they said, well, you got to stay here till tomorrow. All right. And, you're going to be on the line in the mess hall. An E5 in his Class A's. I mean, just some nasty shit. But anyway, so here.
Ken, someone's asking if you can hold up your tab again so we can see your scroll, your Ranger scroll.
Okay, here.
This is Lima Company Airborne Rangers, 75th Infantry.
Yeah, and then here's a Recondo tab.
Little higher, please. Oh, there you go.
So this is what we have. This is brand new. Before that, we had a LRRP tab that completely, you couldn't wear it, but this is our way of saying
yeah.
For not,
Well, Ken, that was before Rangers were like formally institutionalized, and I know you're gonna come and try to strangle me if I get on the Cretan Abrams thing in 1974 or whatever it was. But before Rangers were institutionalized, we disbanded Rangers after every single war, and you guys were that. You had those things you made in country, your Recondo tab, your Ranger scroll. And then after the war was over, they're like, hey, we don't need you anymore. Go away.
Yeah, that's exactly that. That's why I say that we were the LRRPs and the original 75th 75th Infantry Ranger, not 75th Ranger. We were the last traditional American Rangers. And one of the things that makes us different is Vietnam veterans in general feel like we got shit on. Shat on, okay? And rightfully, I think we have that feel. You got to get over it, and a lot of guys haven't gotten over it, politically particularly. But we were aware that World War II Rangers and members of Merrill's Marauders, as soon as the war is over, as soon as there was a Ranger school, these guys all were given Ranger tabs, and legally. I mean, and about half of the Rangers that were in the Korean War got the tab without going to the school. And Bob Gilbert, who was he was at one point was our first sergeant, and his old three war Ranger, just tough old guy. he may have been in charge of the Ranger School when you went through. I don't know. No, that was probably before your time.
No, I went through in 2004, so I'm sure he was retired.
Yeah, so yeah, it was, but he's still around, and he's a character. But he was telling me the last time I was at Fort Benning, he said, you know, I can tell you all of the people that, you know, so there's a list from between the Korean War and the Vietnam War, just about any infantry officer that was captain or above can go through a 2-day walk through the Ranger School and get the tab.
No shit. I didn't know that.
He said, he said, and you're not supposed to tell anybody about this because this was something that I think maybe it was majors on up, but you know, he said, oh yeah, he said, and
Officers.
yeah, he said, he said, I understand the bitterness too, because you know, he went through it and went through hell right after being in the 187th in Korea. He comes back and goes to Ranger School.
What was your test mission like? Your final your mission in Recondo School when you went out into the field?
We it was just a normal. It was what we normally did, except that we didn't know everybody in the team as well. We'd been in this 3 weeks together in the school and so forth. There would be one advisor, as we called him, one of the SF guys that were on the cadre, and then the rest of us would have to rotate, so everybody did every job in the mission. And we get on the helicopter, we get on and we land in it, and these are areas that probably weren't as scary as the Asha Valley and the Rong and places like this where we were normally going. This was not too far from Nha Trang, but it was not a place where there was no enemy. They were there. And we landed, and you know, we did exactly just like what we were used to. On the team I was on, there was another guy, the other guy from the 101st and I were on the same team. We were the only ones from the 101st there, except for a new SF guy who had, and so it was pretty much the same thing. We figured we were a little bit better than the guys who had been LRRPs from the leg units.
Mm-hmm.
And we were, but it's not their fault. You know, the guys who were if you were with the 101st, the 173rd, or the 1st Cav, your division has got better senior NCOs and so forth who've been through these schools and so forth. So everything is going to be a little bit better. But the guys that made it that far through the school had their shit in order anyway. And we'd go out and then we'd be doing this, and we were in an area where there was a lot of bamboo, and then there was some open area out here, and bamboo is nasty stuff to have to go through, and to try to be quiet and so forth. One of the things I remember is one of the times that I had to be point. You know, we everybody did every little job in the thing, every position, and I'm on point. I hit a rusty tree. That's what we would call. That's a tree that looks like it's rusty because it's covered with red ants. And I'm going like this, and looking up, looking down, looking over here, my whole area, and I go like this, and then suddenly I just it's all over the place, and the SF advisor old E7. He has everybody just kind of get around me, and he's all right. Take it, fucking just slap. Everybody slapped the motherfucker a few times. Don't make too much noise, And I still had to move around, but and well, it was kind of funny. And then about 3 or 4 hours later, we hear people moving around the other side of the bamboo, coming this way, and along come. I don't know if they were NVA or local VC. They were in green, but dirty, and they all had AKs. So I probably there weren't any SKSs, and they came around, and they saw us, and we saw them, but we heard them come in first, and so we hosed them.
No shit. So you had a contact on your test
Oh yeah,
mission.
and they got off some rides, some rounds up on us, but didn't hit anybody. And a couple of, at least a few of those guys got away, and we didn't go. You don't chase. You don't go chasing people who want you to chase them into an
Right. You
ambush.
get baited into an ambush.
You know, and none of us were hit. But I killed a guy. So I mean, there's an advantage to that. I shouldn't be happy about having killed somebody, particularly he's just another soldier or something. But whenever I hear somebody say, "Well, you went to Ranger School," we went to Ranger School. How many people did you kill in Ranger School? So that's kind of nice. We can say, and also now we can say, "Hey, no female soldiers have ever gone through the Ranger through the Recondo School." Now they're going through Ranger School, and they're going through SF, they're going through Buds pretty soon, and
it's a whole new world.
Yeah, which I don't think is a good idea. I'm a big fan of Tammy Duckworth, for example, and two military things I really do believe women are better at than men. And there have been some studies that say this. One is pistol shooting. Women that have and men that have taken the same kind of training, the women are slightly better at it if it's not something too big for them. And helicopter, they make good helicopter things. I believe that's fine. But I was an anthropology major at Taiwan University, and took some at University of Michigan too, and so forth. And one thing I learned about humans and just about all mammals is that it ain't just the plumbing. Every society has, this is a woman's role, that's a man's role, and it can be fluid which one it is. An example would be, I don't remember, the Hopi and the Navajo. One of them, in one of these groups, the men did the pottery, and then the other one, the women did the pottery. Okay, but that you have to have some sort of differentiation. And males need to get away from females. Females can get away from males. Well, in theory. And you look at elephants, you look at not the wolves, but you look at elephants, you look at bears, you look at orcas, you look at sperm whales, you look at all the, I'm not sure about the crows, but all the other intelligent social mammals, at least, have got something where the males can get the hell away from the women and go off and do something. This is what humans would do. Women would do, hunter and gatherer. The women would do the gathering. The men would do the hunting. This is a very standard thing. And there's still lots of people in the world who live this way. And it's true. My wife loves to shop. I don't. I want to go get the stuff and get out.
Yeah. Get me the hell out of here.
I want to go out and do things, and I want to do it with the guys, be away from it. And I think that it's folly to think that you can integrate tank crews and infantry platoons. I think it's actually unnatural. And that doesn't mean that the women can't do it as well as the men, or at least most of the stuff. But I just don't think that this is good.
Like culturally,
it's pretending that we're something other than the animal that we are.
Right. You're not allowed to say it now.
No, you're not.
It's not like politically correct to say it. And I think you're right. And I think women can actually do some of these jobs better than we can. I mean, there's certain special forces roles where women can, learn foreign languages and communicate with people and do things way better than guys can. But at the same time, I think there's a movement out there that people want the military to be this reflection of progressive liberal values. And it's really the one thing that combat cannot be. Combat soldiers can never be a representation of that progressive society they want, because combat is primitive and it's ugly and it's nasty.
I think that my feeling about it is, to a great extent, that the military was being punished by having done the right thing and done it very successfully when it came to racial, getting rid of
when it's desegregated.
Yeah, desegregation. It worked with the military much earlier and much better than it did any other part of American society.
The Army desegregated before America did.
Yeah. Oh, much more before. And so consequently, all of these people who don't know anything about the military have been using the military as a social experimental clinic thing or something. And that's just not right.
I think there's just also a very big difference I noticed between a lot of the, we would call them legs, Ken, people who, and I have nothing against them, but they served in the Air Force. They worked in essentially a corporate job. It was like a corporate environment. They came into an office.
And they can be a good infantryman, but they're pogues.
They're pogues. They worked in a sort of quasi-corporate environment, except they wore a uniform. And I know that sounds offensive to some people, but I think there's just a huge cultural difference between those people who did that job and they're American patriots and we need them and God bless them.
Yeah.
And guys like Ken who are out there in combat and what you're experiencing. It's just the necessities and the priorities are just so different between those two. Yeah. They're radically different worlds.
And I think that males should have certain protective instincts for women, for females. If we don't, okay, you're going to have a whole bunch of rapists out there.
Yeah, there's going to be problems. And again, it's nasty to say that, and none of us like it, but we can see the military has a huge sexual assault problem. I mean, it's backed up by the data. Like, it is a problem. It's a huge problem, and the military is not handling it very well.
Yeah, well, they didn't do a lot of thinking before they did gender integration.
And I don't blame the women for that. That's not their fault.
Either. No, I don't blame them.
It's the Army and the way their policies are.
Years ago, when Gary Linder and a whole bunch of us had this magazine uh, here, Behind the
Behind the
Lines.
lines, yeah.
Do you remember? Did you ever see
Yeah,
that?
yeah, I remember it.
Okay. Well, when we did Behind the Lines, one of the things I had to do was uh, to review a book about gays in the military. And I'm reading this and I'm thinking, okay, this was not something that was expected or accepted in my day. And, you don't want to be found to be a gay guy in the military at all in my generation.
Yeah, yeah, back in
But
the
I'm
day.
reading this, and there's lots of stories about people who were gay, who didn't even hide it, but suddenly they use it against them to get them out of the way, who were
Yeah,
doing their
yeah.
job well. And I'm reading this book, and I think, Jesus, these people are getting fucked over. But who really got screwed over were women, because, hey, baby, come on over here. I got something for you. I said, no, thanks. Yeah, yeah, dyke. I mean, that kind of thing was happening a lot. And what hit me was very interesting was the Navy and the Air Force were just, this was happening all over the place
Yeah.
in those two things. And the guy said, hey, baby, come on, And she said, no, you're not my kind. I don't want, yeah, lesbian. And then next thing he's saying, she's a lesbian. And next thing you know, this patriotic girl is working herself very hard for her country, is kicked out with a bad,
Yep. Yeah.
it's outrageous. But in the Army and the Marine Corps, what would happen would be some guy tries to do that to a girl, and he's likely to have a boot up his ass saying, who the hell do you think you are? Who you not? No, you say she's a lesbian? You're just jealous. Get the hell out of here. I mean, the Marine Corps and the Army handled that far better because I don't know why, but they handled it far better than the Army or than the Air Force and the Navy did. In fact, I still have that book somewhere here that I had to do the review of.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. But Ken, I wanted to ask you also about your extensions in theater that you went over to NAM. What was it? A 2-year tour?
It was a 1 year.
It was a 1-year tour, and then you extended 3 times.
Yeah, and that'd be twice for 6 months, and then once for 3 months. And,
Okay.
For 6 months, you could get a 30 day a 30-day vacation. What's the Army term for it?
Oh, when they sent you on like mid tour leave.
Yeah, and a leave, so you'd get a 30-day leave. And the second time I had one, I'm talking to my first sergeant. I said, listen, can I get at least half of the Ranger School? I'll do it on my own leave time. And they said, yeah, I wish you could, but you can't, So that's a part of the thing. But the, going back, if it's a 3-month extension, you get an extra R&R and a leave, the same for a week or something. And you can go to one of the R&R places, which is probably better than going back to the States at that time. Going back to the States, one of the times I went back was in 1968, and the Democratic convention, and they have all these, it was a riot outside, and I'm on the side of the the National Guard guys at first against the protesters. But then I see on TV, here's some National Guy standing there. There's some woman in her car who's got her window down, and she looks like my mother or something. And here's some National Guard guy with an M79 right up against her cheek, like this.
Holy shit.
And I'm thinking, let me go back. Get me out of here.
Yeah, get me the hell out of here.
Yeah. And my family had moved my senior year in high school. They moved to Reno. So my father became the president of the university. And before that, he'd been at the University of Michigan. So I grew up in Ann Arbor, which is quite a liberal town. And I went back on one of my 30-day leaves, extension leaves. I went back to Ann Arbor. And
that's the experience Mopar had in your novel.
Yeah, get me out of here. I want to go back. And I did. I can remember going back and early and, I said, hey, man, don't you have another 7 days? I'm here. I want to. I didn't want to ever leave. I mean, I was quite with the idea that, sooner or later it's going to catch up with me, but man, this is my life. And then you couldn't get another extension. And there was one thing you could get an extension for. And the only thing, a guy named Ray Zojak from our company, and he was quite a soldier. He and I both wanted to extend again, and they wouldn't let us. And then we found out, well, if you go talk to so and so and so and so, and everything goes right, yeah, we got a place for you in SOG. And all right.
Yeah.
And so Bob Gilbert, who I've mentioned a couple of other times, he's Bob Gilbert gets us. There were 3 of us, and one of them died last week, or last year, senility. But the 3 of us wanted to extend again, and we couldn't. And we found out that, you can see. And what happens is if you don't make it, if SOG doesn't want you, then the Army will get you wherever the fuck they want to send you. And we went in and talked to Bob Gilbert. And Bob Gilbert said, look, I was in SF for 3 years in Germany. I don't like it. What do you like? What do you don't like about it? He said, I don't like the hat. All this sort of stuff. He said, look, you guys don't know what's being done. I know what your missions will be. When you're going to get to a launch site, and everybody there already knows each other. They've been to the schools with each other. Their family lives next door to your family in Fayetteville or something. He said, and you guys are going to get in there, and they'll be glad to see you, and they'll like you. But there are missions that is being sent to CNC that you don't want to go to, and they're going to send, if they got to send some Americans, they'll send you rather than somebody that they've known for years. And I said, what is it? He said, well, for what I can tell you is sometimes they just taking people out of the prisons and the jails of Saigon and putting them on a team to send in. You want to go with that?
John Mullins told us that story in a previous interview we did about how they were running double agents.
Yeah. And, basically and it wasn't till years later, and been out of this military, and I'm reading a book about called Sideshow about the bombing of Cambodia and Laos. And I'm reading this, and here's the stuff I read. These SF guys, they're being sent on bomb damage assessment case because they're using the B-52s and trying to knock out all of the NVA stuff in Cambodia and Laos. And, you know, those plagues are dug way down, and they've got concrete, you know, the size of an elephant's ass. And, you know, and they have teams that are getting shot up right on the.
Yeah.
He said, and when they get one of those, it might break their hearts, but they'll send you rather than the guy that they've known for 10 years.
Right.
And that's what it was all about. What Bob Gilbert. Bob Daring was the third guy that he's telling this. But I'm reading that book, and I'm reading stories about that, and the two Harvard brothers that were down in the bottom of the White House finding
the Dulles brothers.
Not the Dulles. No, the Dulles brothers was a generation. I'll remember it.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I don't know.
Two Harvard professors, but they were down working for LBJ and then for Nixon, finding the targets for these B-52 strikes that the Air Force even didn't know about. And you know, finally some officer said, "Fuck you. We're not going on this issue. Fuck you. We're not going." And next thing you know, they're going to get him. They're going to toss this guy into prison forever. He's an SF officer. And what happened was some other officers and a couple of generals had the guys kidnapped, sent to Okinawa, and they gave him an entirely different identity for a while.
What?
So that they couldn't, because
that's crazy.
These Harvard dudes in the basement of the White House wanted to get this guy, and they saved him because it was bullshit. I mean, they're just sending teams that they're just sacrificing.
Die, yeah.
It's may as well walk up the pyramid at Tlachtnan or something.
So Ken, you eventually rose to the level of being a recon team leader.
Yeah.
And I mean, you kind of got to do it all on the LRRP team.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, it's one of those things where like the merry-go-round comes to an end. Like you were having a hell of a good time in Vietnam, but like what happened that eventually you had to go home, and what was that like?
Well, I was torn. There were two things that guys senior than me had been doing. One, which was go to SF and just, I didn't want to go through a whole bunch of stuff at Fort Bragg. I just wanted to be, with Mountain Yards or a recon team or something. But okay, I'll do that. And then the guys that had been in SF that were in our unit, or that we knew the SF guys nearby, they're saying, "Hey, they're not going to send you back here. They're going to send you to Germany or something." I'm thinking, fuck. And then the other one was to become a RI. And what they would do is they send you, and you're running guys through your PT and all this sort of shit. And so you have a kind of a shitty kind of E5 job. And then for a few months and then you go to the school and you get out and you become an RI. And boy, man, these guys that had been doing that, these guys, Milton Lockett and some of these dudes, man, they're saying it sounded like the best thing in the whole world to be an RI, man. Said because you got all this free time and then you're doing it when you're really doing it. And so I'm really thinking about this. And then my sister sends me a letter. And I got that letter 2 days before I left Vietnam. So it came just in time because I was still could have come back. My mother had some kind of
an aneurysm,
not an aneurysm, but
or a
a
stroke.
stress stroke from me continuing to
Be a LRRP.
to be a LRRP, and I should have been home then, and I'm going, well, I'm home, but I'm going back, and all this. And they didn't tell me about this. And my sister told me that she'd been in the hospital at Stanford. And so I thought, okay. And, there were a lot of girls that I knew back in Michigan and in Nevada and everywhere that, that I wanted to kind of get together with them, a little bit too. And, I mean, going on R&R is pretty nice, but it's not, but that, I just felt like this was my life. This is what I'm going to do. And they didn't let me do it all the way in. I was planning to go back to Vietnam this last spring. And these little nasty little things called viruses got in the way of everything.
Yeah.
But do you realize that I'm a member of Chapter 78 SFA that just I can't remember the word right now, but it's an A on my
the Special Forces Association.
Yeah. So my number is an A, which means that I'm not, SF, but I'm one of the.
You're like an honorary member or an associate member.
Yeah, an associate member. That's it. And I'm a life associate member, which is rare. And our chapter built a obstacle course for one of the ROTC units at
really?
schools here. And when it opened, we went down there, us old guys, and here's all these ROTC kids, and that was cool. Watching them go through their stuff, and we're trying to do it, realizing that we're not as young as we are. And I'm talking to one kid, his last name was Pham, Pham. And I said, oh, you're from Vietnamese. He said, yeah. I said, where's your family from? I said, Saigon. I said, people from Saigon still call it Saigon. But I said, do you speak Vietnamese? He said, I do now. I said, I do now a lot better. He said, my parents were just going crazy because I was forgetting all my Vietnamese all the way from first grade up. I'm just English, and it was really getting to them. And then I went to Vietnam, and everything I forgot came back, and I learned a whole lot more. And I said, but they said, and they forgave me. I said, forgave you for what? For going back. I said, well, what did you go back for? He said, well, that was last year, or the year before last. This year, I'm going back again. I said, what? He said, an ROTC scholarship. What? He said, yeah, we have an exchange program with the People's Army of Vietnam's ROTC, whatever their ROTC thing is. He said, yeah, that's, and so my parents are all fine with it. They said they've gone back since I went just to see, family members and so forth. They wouldn't have otherwise, but they were ready to disown me.
That's, I mean, wow.
This is
times change.
Yeah, times have changed. And this guy from there's one special unit that I won't mention. Well, I just did, I guess, one special unit, but they do regular things from Fort Lewis over to Vietnam to do things, and a lot of anti-terrorist stuff that they're working on. And one of these guys came to one of our chapter meetings because his family lives down here. And so all the old Vietnam vets, he said, wow, man, what it was like. And he said, oh, let me tell you. He said, we get there and he said, we get to meet the guys. And he said, and they all have some, because everybody has to learn English, at least some of it now in Vietnam. He said, so, we meet the guys. And then the next day we go out and he said, and there's all these old people around, these old guys around. They're just shaking their head and scratching their head. They said, I can't believe it. And they, wow, And he said, who's that? He said, what is, I guess, well, that guy's, he's my uncle over there, and this is over there. They're
old NVA guys. Yeah.
And they're just delighted to see American Green Berets over there working with. I mean, this is, and again, you realize, and see, humans and chimpanzees are the dumbest apes there are. With this war.
Speaking of which, what was it like for you when you came home after the war, it started your academic career, going back to college? I mean, what was that like in that time frame?
I didn't like it. I didn't like students. I didn't like academia, even though, I started going to the University of Nevada when I came back, and they had the anti-war moratorium thing in October. I was taking classes there, and here's all this anti-war people, and they're bad mouthing us. Like, hey, are you going to be another Nazi over there? And that's, and I wanted to kill him. And my father's the president of the university. I wish I had an M16 and a whole bunch of regular. I mean, I wanted to just hose them down. They infuriated me. And, because there's a baby killer sort of shit being thrown at.
Peace creeps.
I mean, they're not doing it to me necessarily because I'm in civilian clothes. But yeah, you're going to be a baby's killer? Oh, no, all these people, these guys. And then I'd hear all these students, hey, you're going to the thing tonight, we're having a light, lighting candles and do this.
Oh,
so there's going to be lots of women there, there's going to be lots of pussy there, lots of weed. I think this is what this war is to you. This is, I mean, it took me a long time.
Ken, if I can just share one of my own experiences that maybe you'll be able to relate to a bit. When I think maybe it was just after I got I got out of the Army, I went to college, did 4 years, and it was right about that time I think I was graduating college. I went to it was like a book release party. So a journalist named Jeremy Scahill was putting out this book with Glenn Greenwald. It was the big like data dump. All these documents had leaked. It was like our generation's version of the Pentagon Papers. All these documents had come out, and they did this book release. And I went there with all these hippies, all these peace creeps in this big room, and they had a projector screen playing footage of drone footage, like the black and white drone footage from Afghanistan, and like, you know, they're dropping bombs, blowing things up. And they had this like kind of like fat guy with a beard come out, and he was like, okay, you know, here's a rap I made about drones. And like he starts rapping about drones up on the stage. And it's just the most surreal thing I'd ever seen in my life, that here's real military footage of this, of drones dropping bombs and ostensibly killing people in Afghanistan or Iraq, with this like hippie rapping about drones in front of like 500 other hippies. Like, it was just the weirdest goddamn thing I had ever seen. And I was like, is this the war I fought in? Is this what it means to you? Like, what in the hell is going on here?
Was he an anti-peace guy, or was he a drone guy?
They were all very much anti-war, and yeah, they're all very much against the war, which I understand. On one hand, I get it, you know, I understand the argument against it, but that it's sort of like commercialized into this sort of like, we're going to do a rap song about drones with the real footage of the drones behind you. Like, it was all very, very odd to me.
There was at the University of Nevada, when I came back, there were two guys. One was an SF guy who was, and I think he was in Saigon the whole time, and the other one was a Marine who had been in the Battle of Wei, and I could be friends with him, and it was impossible because they had switched over to be, everybody in Vietnam that in the military is a murderous scumbag, and I was too, and all of this. And, you know, I'm sorry, I don't want to be a turncoat like that. And they were getting all these peace creep girls, so they would go to all of these rap things where everybody would sit, not like rappers rap, but where you're just talking.
Yeah, rap sessions, and they all snap their fingers. Yeah.
Oh, but you know, and they'd be talking about all of this, and these guys would go in, and they would make up stories of atrocities that they did in Vietnam, and then they would start crying, and then all these girls would come, oh, it's okay, and this is the only way. And I'm thinking, is this the only way you guys can get laid? No, I mean, and then one of them.
It goes on to this day, Mr. Miller. Yeah, to this day, it's still happening.
But war is nasty.
Yeah.
And you got, but there's a lot of people. I get freaked out by people, by wannabes too, and by people who, well, you know, I would have gone, but. In fact, I'll send it to you later, email, but read Henry V, Shakespeare's Henry V. And also in Henry IV, I forgot if it was part 1 or 2, but this guy saying, oh, and you know, I too would have been a soldier if not for those vile guns that make it possible for somebody beneath me to kill somebody as good as me. And, you know, and then, oh, well, they're carrying a body past me. And he's sniffing it. And here's this guy this officer, and he's saying, I want to kill it. He wants to kill the fuck. I'll find it for you and send it, that part to you, email it.
Yeah, please.
But I'm not sure that Shakespeare was Shakespeare. I sort of think that the Earl of Oxford was.
Yeah. Because whoever wrote that stuff was highly educated.
Yeah, and also saw a little bit of contact, you know, and knew the law and all this. But I'll send it to you. I don't want to have to go through it all.
Yeah. No, whenever you get the
But-
chance.
It's it's war is for these people that I would have, but such and such, and I've forgotten who. There've been a few politicians that said, "Oh yeah, well I would have gone to Vietnam, but my IQ was too high. They wouldn't let me because my IQ was." And I mean, this is some senator. I remember. I don't remember who it was saying this kind of stuff. What kind of people? And I get freaked out. Uh, I went to Gary Linder lives in uh, not Jansen. What is it in Missouri? The the place that Homer on
Springfield?
Springfield, not Springfield. It's the entertainment place in Missouri.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, I don't know.
You know the one I'm talking about. It's the one that Homer Simpson said, "Oh, that's more that's where the Christian people go to instead of Las Vegas or something." I've forgotten.
Oh, I don't. I'm
Branson,
sorry, Branson. Okay.
Okay, so I went to this thing that Gary and some other people had put together in Branson, and it's good seeing all these veterans around and everything. But then they have all of these smiling, smiling people with their flags on their jackets and all this sort of stuff, but that have never spent a moment in their side on the sidelines. Yes, you guys are right. But they don't mean it. There's certain kinds of. Do you know the?
Yeah. There's these pussies out there like John
Yeah.
Bolton that talk about wanting to start war all over the
John
fucking
Bolton.
world. But like when someone asked him about why he didn't serve in Vietnam, and he was like, "Oh well, there are better things I could do than die in a rice paddy somewhere."
Well, Cheney, when he was a Secretary of Defense, somebody asked him why he didn't serve in Vietnam. He said, "I had other things to do with my life."
Sure did.
Yeah.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you for your service. Welcome home, brother.
Assholes.
Yeah, you ain't my brother.
Yeah.
That stuff bothers me a lot. And,
Ken, I think we've been going for like over 2 hours at this point,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think me and you could go like another 3 hours, and like it would be like blinking an eye. I want to ask you to stay for the little bonus segment afterwards for like 10-15 minutes, but before we wrap this up here, any final thoughts that you want people to know about the LRRPs, about the Vietnam War? Anything that you want to say to folks out there who listen to this?
It was unnecessary, unwise, but I think that the people on our side, the people on the other side, the people on our side, meaning the Americans, the Australians, the South Koreans, the Thais, the Filipinos, there were New Zealand, and the Arvans, and the Mountain Yards that were on our side, and and the people who were in the PAVN, the NVA, and the local guerrillas. We all thought we were doing the right thing. Not everybody did, but each side thought that they were doing the right thing, the moral thing, the correct thing. And all of us had some reason there was some truth for it for all of us. But it was a big, stupid, foolish thing that shows that humans, we might be very smart, but we're not very wise.
And at the same time, it's something that, as foolish and unwise as the war was, it's something that really stuck with you and defined your life in so many ways. I think, Ken, that you wrote this novel, you wrote Tiger the Lurp Dog, you wrote a nonfiction book called Six Silent Men about it, and this is something that has come. It did define your not just your young life, but it came to define who you became as a man later in life.
I often think how different my life would be if I had taken advantage to not go in the military and just go on to college and do all this and
Go to the rap sessions with the
go to the
hippies.
rap sessions and and uh, I would be a much better. Uh, I would have been able to. I would have had more money that I could spend on my family, but
Right,
we
right.
managed to manage. We managed to get our kids through college and good schools, uh, and are doing well enough now that we spend a lot of money on good uh, charities, mainly animal charities, but I was supposed to be another professor or something, and uh, you know, I just no, I did what I wanted to do, and what. Let me tell you, I was born. I was conceived in Austin, Texas, and I was born in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So I was, college towns. Uh, in Washtenaw County, Michigan, where Ann Arbor is, they have in the courtroom, they have a list of all the people from Washtenaw County who died in various wars. You look at the ones from the Vietnam War, and I knew almost every single one of the guys, and there weren't
Wow.
very many from Ann Arbor who died in Washtenaw County. But you look at the smaller towns, Saline, Dexter, Chelsea, man, they've got more people than people from my age range that I would have known coming up in Ann Arbor. They had more people from these little towns than Ann Arbor had from my generation of people who died in the war. And it was unfair, the rural kids, working class kids,
Yep.
minority kids. And nobody will ever tell me that it was fair and that there was any equality to it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There wasn't. Uh, I knew one other professor's kid, and I knew in what people I knew when I was in the Army, and people I've known, veterans I've known since. I've known one other professor's kid. I know doctors' kids. Most of them were Army doctors, their fathers. Uh, how many people? There was something. How many people in the House and Senate lost a kid in the Vietnam War? I think it was one during the time of the Vietnam War.
Reminds me of our a current politician of ours who got 3 deferments for his bone spurs.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I I can look at myself in the mirror, and I know that if I met Tammy Duckworth and there's nobody else around, and we could just sit down and talk or something, that she would talk to me.
Yeah, yeah. No, she's for real. She's a real
She's for
deal.
real. And uh, What's his name? I won't say it. What's his name? Can't say that. And neither can his Spence or any of these others. It bothers me a lot to see my fellow veterans. Their politics sometimes really freaks me out. And I can't hold it against them. But I was like that for 10 years after the war. And there's a good reason for us to feel that we got stabbed in the back and all of this sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But this country would be a lot better if the Vietnam veterans had outgrown that and had not let it just fester. And I'm talking about people that I love.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
and
No, that really strikes home with me, Ken. Well, the what I see in your generation and also in my own generation of guys who are carrying around a lot of anger from the war, and that manifests in how they view American politics.
We have an advantage over your generation. You guys will never, ever be able to sit down and have a cup of coffee, or certainly not a beer, with the guys that you had to fight against. You know, how many ISIS guys and so forth?
Yeah.
Ain't no way.
Yeah, and I will never respect them the way that you came to respect the Vietnamese.
And they respected us.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's the same thing. World War II. You know, the enemies we were against were purely evil enemies, but not purely evil soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just doing what we were just doing, just like the North Vietnamese guys were. You know, and so how long did it take? Very, very soon. You know, I mean, as soon as you stop shooting each other, you're buddies, or you can be. And goes to show the folly of war. But so we have something else to do right now, right?
Yeah. I just want to read a couple comments here real quick before we go on to that. Alejandro says, "Thank you, Mr. Miller, for your books that we grew up reading, and for your service, for being an inspiration to generations of Rangers, an example and standard that we aspire to be, sua sponte."
Right. One of us.
And he also asked a question down here. What are your thoughts on Corps Level LRRC being disbanded a few years ago? So I guess he's asking about the current LRRC units in the Army being disbanded.
I think it's probably a mistake. You know, you definitely need that, and it was working well. I mean, I remember the first Gulf War, and we'd go to Fort Campbell and talking to the guys from the 101st, the LRRC guys, and you know, they were sitting there and saying, "Man, you know, we're dug in on this hill, and just so many people going by there, just and it reached the point where I'm thinking, God, I hope these guys get out of here before they surrender, because I don't know how to deal with them." You know, I mean, it was good, but what happened was somebody in the went, "Oh, you're surveillance. You know, you don't need to have a machine gun or something. You know, you just, you know, or that's reconnaissance. You don't need this." People that have never done it don't know it. You know, say you have a reconnaissance unit that's just supposedly, in theory, just reconnaissance. I can speak from experience. You know, I was an LRRP Lurp and an LRP Lurp, and there's a difference in them. There's a ranger. It's not a big difference at all. But when we had two R's in there, we were still doing raids. We were still doing ambushes. We were still doing all of the kind of stuff. We were still doing point for our infantry company. You know, we were doing all of this stuff. And don't say a reconnaissance. Well, that's just reconnaissance. You're just going sneaking around. And
of course,
that
they
may
think they
be
can
what-
replace you with a drone these days too.
Yeah, and they can't. A drone can't
It
figure
can't
out.
stay. It can't stay in the air all day and all night.
Well, what I remember thinking when drums first came out was they can't look at the bottom of a bridge. They can look to the bottom of beneath the bridge, but they can't. They probably can now. Can they just turn up but
Maybe from an angle.
Yeah, but they just don't know. There's no.
Yeah, we haven't yet been able to replace the notion of having a leader's recon or a human reconnaissance team on the ground.
And if we ever do that, I hope that it's just machines fighting machines and not letting anybody get hurt by it.
So I think that's it. We'll do the bonus segment in 1 second, Ken. I just want to say, Ken, thank you so much for spending like 2.5 hours with us tonight. And special thanks also to your son for helping fix all this up and make it happen. He's awesome.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
And thank you to everyone who came here and watched the show tonight, everyone who will watch it, in the future. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already.
I will.
You like us. You can leave some comments below. Tell us, do you think we're doing good? Do you think we're doing bad? Let us know. And there's also a link down in the description for our Patreon page if you guys want to support the site or support the channel financially.
I don't know how to do all of this stuff.
Ken, you don't have to do any of that. I'm talking to the listeners.
Well, I want to do it, but
I'll whatever you want, I'll just give it to you. Just ask me.
Okay.
I guess that's kind of it.
I would like to apologize for my senility and forgetting words groping for words. And
no need to apologize, Ken. It's really an honor to have you here, and you're one of our OGs. You're one of the guys we go to for knowledge, and I really appreciate it and really respect you. So I mean, it's a privilege for me to be able to interview you and to have you here on the show.
I have to say, speaking for my generation of Lurps and Rangers, it's amazing to see what grew out of us.
Yep.
When you look at what they have now, the Ranger Regiment has got its own. It's got everything now. Everything. It's got its own MI battalion. MI battalion, and there's nobody that's better at that job in the whole world than the 75th Rangers.
And it's because of you guys. We stood on your shoulders.
Well, yeah, but
No, it is.
You guys had it, but although there is something to that, because a lot of the guys did stay up into the.
Yeah.
I mean, Bob Gilbert is still around, being his old rough old self.
Maybe I have to twist your arm and see if I can interview Bob at some point. So guys, next Friday, our guest on the show is going to be Ed Kugler, who served as a Marine Scout sniper in Vietnam. I have to
sort of familiar. Maybe you mentioned it before.
He wrote 2 books. I think one is about his time in Vietnam, and one is about PTSD and kind of recovering from what he went through in the war. So we'll have him on next week. And I have to, this coming week, I have to read his book so that I know what the hell I'm talking about.
Get Gary Linder on sometime. And
I would love to get
Have you
Gary
had
on.
have you had Tilt up, John Singleton?
I have Tilt scheduled for, hold on, I'll tell you guys right now, September 25th. John
Okay.
Mayer will be on the show.
I keep wanting to say John Singleton Mosby, so I just call him Tilt.
Tilt.
By the way,
Okay, guys.
John Mosby is a fascinating character.
We'll have to have that conversation.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry to cut you off, but we're going to stop
Yeah.
the episode now, and we'll go into the bonus segment. Hope to see all of the rest of you guys there, and one way or the other, I'll see you next week. So thank you.